What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I'm a musician and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, thank you so very much for being here. Thank you for being with me day after day, week after week. I super appreciate all y'all who send me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. You help me to feel like I'm not just shouting into the abyss of the internet here. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for listening to the music where you can, I just went back and listened to some of my music recently and was like, damn, this shit slaps. So thank you for paying attention and listening to it. If you don't have the attention for it, if you just press play on it and go to the next room, that's also helpful to me. Thank you so much for going to Patreon, where I post an electional report where it'll give you some timing ideas. So a good time to go on a first date, a good time to launch your product or your business or whatever that is. All of these kinds of things are super helpful. I also just did a podcast with my friend Joanna Farrer, who does the Coffee and Divination podcast. So check that out as well. I'll put a link here. Thank you so much for being here. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. This week, one of the nice things about this week is that Venus is the star of the week. So the last, 3-4 weeks or something like that, I've been talking about Mars every week. It's just been all Mars, everything, and Mars with the sun, or Mars square to Saturn or something like that. And so that's been rough for lots of reasons, because Mars is a malefic and because Saturn is a malefic. And so that has looked very difficult and uncomfortable for some time now. This week, Mars is not the focal point. It's pretty rad. So Venus is going to move into Scorpio in like a couple of hours or something like this. And so as Venus moves into Scorpio, a few things are going to happen. Now, one, Venus is not super comfortable in Scorpio, right? Venus rules Taurus, which is opposite to Scorpio. And so this is Venus like being as far away from home as possible, and therefore maybe in a position where the Venus thing, so Venus is associated with harmony and cooperation and togetherness and beautiful things and this kind of stuff. Whereas Scorpio typically is a Mars sign, right? So we see a little bit more aggression in the space. Or I often think about Scorpio as being like kind of swampy. It's kind of funky in there, and like there's something that's like a little difficult about that space or something like this. Like it's often associated with poisons or venom or something like this, right? The scorpion will like pierce deeply and then poison you from the inside, or this kind of thing. So that's what Scorpio is typically associated with, and so Venus can have a little bit of trouble in this space from time to time. But what we can notice here is that Venus is now away from the South Node. So Venus in Libra, although Venus was at home in Libra, we did have the South Node to contend with. And so there was like a kind of drain that was going on there. As Venus moves into Scorpio, we'll see a departure from that and sort of like a return to just kind of normalcy when it comes to the Venus things a little bit. So the cooperation, the togetherness, the relational sort of stuff might see a little bit of improvement here. And that might continue to be true for a couple of reasons. One, because we'll see a trine to Saturn in Pisces more or less immediately. So Saturn is early in Pisces, and so as soon as Venus moves into Scorpio, then we'll see that trine going on. A trine is supportive, helpful, this kind of thing. So beneficial, I often, Saturn has had a rough go of things recently with these squares from Saturn or from the Sun and Mars and this kind of thing, right? And so it's cool to see Saturn in a position where we're getting a little bit of support in some kind of ways. It's easy to talk bad about Saturn because Saturn is a malefic and will typically speak to challenges or discomfort or something like that. But Saturn is also very important. It's very important to be able to say no to things, to have some kind of limitation, to have some boundaries, to generate some infrastructure of some sort. Especially Saturn in Pisces can get, Pisces is I often think about the deep ocean, right? Like the sense of like it's all kind of the one thing, the same soup of stuff, especially since Neptune is there as well, right? That can get to be a little bit flowy and can be a little difficult. One of the things that my friend Palace said on one of the forecasts that we did a while back was that that we were running out of Saturn, like just easy Saturn to like, because we had Saturn in Capricorn and then Aquarius, and those are two Saturn signs right in a row. And so it was very easy to sort of just like remember or just do the Saturn things because there was all this Saturn that you could just lean on in the sky. Now that Saturn is in Pisces, then we're in a different space with that. And so the Saturn stuff requires a little more effort, especially in the like big soup where the boundaries are less of a thing in that sort of space, right? So for Saturn to get some support from Venus looks like, okay, like this, on the one hand, it looks like it's really creative. It looks like there's a bunch of ideas to be had here, and maybe something that wants to come out that's maybe musical or artistic or, harmonious, or brings people together, generates some kind of like nice feeling in some kind of way. And Saturn, has had like some rough stuff going on with like attacks from Mars and an attack from the sun and this kind of thing, right? So to see this Venus in Scorpio coming in to support looks really good for the Saturn, and honestly, to my mind, looks pretty good for Venus as well. Venus in Scorpio Scorpio is a fixed water sign, right? So this idea of like having some kind of structure, some kind of supportive structure from Saturn, from a trine to Saturn, looks like something that Venus in Scorpio could really get into. Then, as Venus moves a little bit further forward, we're going to see an opposition to Jupiter in Taurus. Taurus is a sign that is ruled by Venus, and so that's with reception. We always like to see an aspect to Jupiter, even in opposition. And opposition can sometimes be like a little bit of conflict or tension or something like that. But conflict or tension with something good, which Jupiter tends to represent. Jupiter tends to represent like joy and luck and abundance and this kind of thing, right? So an opposition to that looks like some kind of challenge or hurdle or obstacle that turns into something beautiful or delicious in some kind of way. You don't get the beautiful meal without all of the preparation that comes before it and that kind of thing, right? So that looks really cute for the togetherness and for doing things in some kind of like delicious or wonderful way. We can also remember that Jupiter is ruling that Saturn. So all of the Saturn things, the ability to say no to things, one thing that I've been saying to clients over and over again recently is the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. So in order to do that, you have to say no to the things that are not the main thing so that you can say yes to the things that are the main thing, right? And so this looks like a really good opportunity to remember. One other thing that my friend Pallas said on one of the forecasts was she called Venus in Scorpio a ride or die aspect, which I think is really, really good. It's this idea of like, I care about it so very deeply that no matter what happens, I'm sticking with this shit. And so Venus trine to Saturn, opposite to Jupiter, looks really good for remembering what matters most and pursuing that thing with intensity and clarity and a kind of with blinders on, you know what I mean? So we've got that situation going on here. Then also, we're not done yet. Venus is also going to make a sextile to Mercury in Capricorn. Now, Mercury in Capricorn is getting slow at this point. We are getting to a point where there's going to be a Mercury station pretty soon. We're going to see a Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. So we saw a Mercury sextile to Venus back in Venus in Libra and Mercury in Sagittarius. That was associated with the agreement of a ceasefire in Gaza, for example, which, to be fair, left a lot to be desired, right? We can remember that Venus was with the South Node at that time and getting drained a little bit and this kind of thing. However, it was better than nothing. And so we will see a little bit of a return to this, and it might be practical in some kind of way that, like the way that Mercury in Capricorn is an earth sign that is ruled by Saturn. So there's something that very procedural about that. So and sextile is like a complementary or a helpful aspect, right? So taking the Venus in Scorpio commitment to the desire and then taking and complementing that with the sense of like, procedural memory and like doing things that actually taking slow and deliberate steps toward a goal. That looks like it wants to be really helpful this week. So this is a really good week for channeling the creative energy, especially with teamwork or something like this. This looks like a really good week for building coalitions or getting together with people, especially people who you might have been through some bullshit with. It's been many weeks full of bullshit, and it's not like the bullshit stops this week, right? Like we still live in the world that we live in, but there there's maybe an opportunity to come together, to break bread together, to like live in the same space, breathe the same air for a little while, and remember that, you know what, we are family, we are on the same team, and we do love each other. Thank y'all so much for being here. I love you. I hope you'll love this content